හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Friday, the 19th of April 2024. Applauded. World Bank commends Sri Lanka's economic performance, assures continued support for reforms implementation. Tough journey ahead. IMF warns of a difficult future for Sri Lanka despite commendable economic recovery. Solve your problems. Elections Commission urges the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to resolve internal crises before elections, says the Commission cannot intervene into internal party crises.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Ada Derana First at 9 with Anuradhi Wickramasinghe. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening. You're joining us on First at 9. Lovely to have you here. Let's get you the latest updates from around the nation now, starting off with some hopeful news. While commending Sri Lanka's progress in the implementation of World Bank supported reforms, the Global Lenders Vice President for the South Asian region, Martin Reiser, assured continued support to Sri Lanka to achieve economic growth. His assurance was given during a bilateral meeting with the Sri Lanka delegation to the United States to participate in the World Bank IMF spring meetings. Assurances to support Sri Lanka were meanwhile given by Deputy Assistant Secretary of the US Treasury Robert Caproth, who held talks with the Sri Lankan delegation on the progress of debt restructuring and ongoing governance reforms.
On the sidelines of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund spring meetings, the Sri Lankan delegation in Washington, D.C. met with the World Bank's Vice President for the South Asian region, Martin Reiser. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe noted that Reiser commended Sri Lanka for the progress made with steady implementation of World Bank-supported reforms. While talks were also focusing on the forthcoming reforms that will unlock the next round of World Bank financing, the World Bank's Vice President for the South Asian region assured continued support for Sri Lanka. Later, the Sri Lankan delegation called on the Chief Administrative Officer of the World Bank Group, Wenzai Zhang, to discuss recent economic developments and the progress of the debt restructuring process. According to the State Minister of Finance, the Chief Administrative Officer had assured the World Bank's fullest support and cooperation for Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan delegation also held talks with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the US Treasury, Robert Caproth, on Sri Lanka's recent economic developments, the progress of debt restructuring, strengthening tax administration and ongoing governance reforms. Caproth has assured the fullest support of the US for Sri Lanka on all fronts. In the meantime, addressing the discussions at the Paris Pact for People and the Planet during the World Bank IMF spring meetings, the State Minister of Finance said Sri Lanka's launch of the Tropical Belt Initiative at COP28 in Dubai provides a mechanism to catalyse private financing into climate and biodiversity-related investments. He added that Sri Lanka aims to establish a climate change university with a view to generating knowledge and expertise to address the ever-expanding challenges related to climate change and the loss of biodiversity.
New Dulux Pentolite Hygiene Plus. Refreshing walls for generations.
Dulux. And while commending the progress achieved by Sri Lanka in terms of economic recovery, Director of the International Monetary Fund's Asia and Pacific Department, Krishna Srinivasan, said the island's nation has more work to do as the road ahead is going to be difficult. Addressing a media briefing of the IMF on its regional economic outlook for Asia and the Pacific, Srinivasan expressed hope that Sri Lanka's debt restructuring talks, which he said are currently progressing well, will conclude soon.
When Sri Lanka embarked on this adjustment program, it was clearly, it had its back to the wall. Things were really not in very good shape. But you do see early signs of recovery. I would call them green shoots. Real GDP expanded by 3% year on year in the second half of 2023. March inflation was 0.9% versus 70% peak in September 2022. Reserves increased by 2.5 billion in 2023, and the primary balance reached a surplus of 0.6% of GDP in 2023. The reason I'm giving you these numbers is to show that the program on which Sri Lanka embarked upon was ambitious, much needed, but now it's delivering results. I don't want to jinx it because the road ahead is going to be harder, but there is progress being made both in terms of growth for recovery and in terms of inflation. I said that there's still much more work to be done, both in terms of fiscal policy, in terms of building reserves, in terms of becoming resilient, debt restructuring negotiations. I think they're progressing well in terms of with the official creditors. There's been a good progress. It's been quite encouraging, the news there. With private creditors, the discussions are ongoing. You know this for a fact that we don't get involved in these negotiations at all. We just watch to see what's happening. We provide input to the partners who are in the negotiation, both on the macro framework and what's falling ahead. My sense is that there are some setbacks on the private sector restructuring, but again, both parties are talking. So I'm hopeful that there will be some conclusions down the road.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe points out that Sri Lanka needs a new economy and a new political system in order to preserve the stability that was achieved with the crisis. Addressing a meeting with young political representatives in the Nuwara district, the head of state reiterated his commitment to fostering the region's development into a premier tourist destination.
A meeting of young members of parliament and emerging political figures from the Nuwara district was held at the President's house in Nuwara under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday.
Political party leaders refused to take responsibility for the government. Usually, political leaders would come running to accept the position of Prime Minister. However, in this situation, they chose to do the opposite. We were in a difficult situation. From that point on, we are now moving the country towards stability. Are we letting the country collapse again? All of you must look at how the country can be taken forward. We have to decide whether we are going to continue with the same political system or change it. I will not hold this position forever. Others should take up this position too. All of you vote for political parties. What can we do if they are not willing to take responsibility? The country needs a new economy and a new political system. If not, the country will collapse again. We can develop the tourism industry. Are you ready to do that? The Taj hotels expressed their willingness to invest in the Nuwara post office land and adjoining lands. However, the public objected. Thereafter, the Taj hotel said they will not invest due to public objection. How many people are using the post office now? The number must have been higher 25 years ago. People in Galle want their post office to be converted into a hotel. However, people in Nuwara say no to hotels. What can I do? People in Nuwara are not responsible for this. The protest was organized by a set of individuals. There is a circuit bungalow for the postal workers inside the building. They did this to protect that. As a result of their move to protect the circuit bungalow, they prevented an opportunity to create jobs. No one said that the building would be demolished. No one said that the building would be demolished. All of you should have taken care of that situation. Investors are coming to Sri Lanka with the necessary funds. In the end, the Hilton agreed to convert the Bogambara prison into a hotel.
The Election Commission urged the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to resolve its internal crises, adding that they will have to take a decision pertaining to party nominations if the situation continues even after an election is announced. Further, the Commission pointed out that they do not have legal authority to resolve internal matters of a party.
On the 4th of April, an interim injunction was issued by the Colombo District Court preventing former President Maithripala Sirisena from functioning as the chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Upon considering it on the 18th of April, the injunction was further extended until the 9th of May. As a crisis has emerged within the party, a meeting of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party Politburo was held on the 8th of April under the patronage of its senior advisor, former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga. A decision was taken to appoint Nimal Siripala de Silva, the party's senior vice chairman as acting chairman. Later steps were taken by SLFP's national organizer Duminda Disanayaka to make the Election Commission aware of the new changes made to the party leadership. However, on the 17th of April, the SLFP's acting general secretary filed objections with the Election Commission against the recent SLFP appointments. In such a backdrop, the Election Commission convened yesterday to discuss the developments. The Commission is of the view that they do not have legal authority to resolve the internal matters of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and added that they must be resolved by party members through the judiciary. Considering the fact that there is already a pending case pertaining to the internal crisis of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party before the judiciary, the Commission highlighted that they are only capable of acting on orders or recommendations delivered by a court. However, the Election Commission is of the view that they have to take a decision on nominations of the SLFP if the internal crisis continues even after an election is announced.
Former General Secretary of Sri Lanka Freedom Party Dayasiri Jayasekara says he will stand against the decision to remove Maithripala Sirisena as the party chairman. Meanwhile, parliamentarian Chanthima Weerakkodi says that the supporters of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party are joining hands with the Samagi Jana Balawegaya against President Ranil Wickremesinghe. And with that, let's take a look at views expressed in the political arena today.
Some
people think I'm trying to protect Maithripala Sirisena. He committed many wrongdoings. However, I will do my best to take steps against his suspension. These people are using the wrong method to remove him. There is a way to remove him in line with the party's constitution. Disregarding such policies leads to the party's deterioration. When they are offered a ministerial portfolio, they always put the Sri Lanka Freedom Party aside. Even today, they are members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. However, they support Ranil Wickremesinghe.
What I understand is that when steps are being taken to push the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to support the president, its supporters will not remain with them. All of these supporters are now in the process of joining the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, which they find to be a suitable party for them.
We have a proper plan. Like others say, we are not planning to cling on to other political parties. They are the ones who are jobless. We will make the Sri Lanka Freedom Party the next political party that will grab the political power of this country.
Everyone has a right to dream. However, it is much better if it becomes a reality. Chandrika Bandaranayake will ensure that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party will support President Ranil Wickremesinghe. It is said that most of the SLPP members are with the president. They are now also aiming at the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. If all of them are working against us, then our victory will be much easier.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe is always trying to bring people from our party to his side. He has created issues in both the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. However, he cannot do the same with Samagi Jana Balawegaya. We do not need him. If he joins hands with us, it will be a big loss for us because he is a good friend of the Rajapaksas.
Transparency International Sri Lanka has filed a fundamental rights petition before the Supreme Court against the procurement of substandard medicines by the Minister of Health. Through the petition, TISL highlights that fundamental rights have been violated through the purchase of certain types of drugs, including human immunoglobulin vials, without following proper procurement processes. 66 individuals, including former Minister of Health Keheliya Rambukwella, Cabinet of Ministers, the Treasury Secretary, the Auditor General, the Director General of Customs, the Inspector General of Police and the Attorney General have been named respondents of the petition. TISL seeks court intervention to declare that importation of pharmaceuticals without competitive bids was wrongful and illegal. Further, TISL requested the court to direct the Auditor General to conduct a special inquiry into the decision to procure medical supplies from medical suppliers to whom waivers of registration had been issued and compute the cost incurred by procuring medical supplies through them. TISL also requested the court to direct the Attorney General to take measures to recover the costs incurred to the state or the public and seek compensation from the relevant parties mentioned in the petition. Now, the final rights of former Deputy Minister and former UNP parliamentarian Paratha Thera Peruma were performed earlier this afternoon. Thera Peruma passed away from electrocution last Tuesday. His remains were brought to his residence in Yatadolawatha on Wednesday, where massive crowds gathered to pay their final respects. During the course of the day, prominent figures including President Ranil Wickremesinghe, former President Maithripala Sirisena and opposition leader Sajith Premadasa paid their final respects to the former Deputy Minister. The final rites of the late MP commenced at around 2 p.m. today. The remains of Thera Peruma were later brought to the gravesite he had built himself some time ago. A prominent figure of the United National Party, Thera Peruma served as Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Wimber Development and Cultural Affairs in the UNP-led national government in 2015. The Ceylon Workers' Congress today launched a protest in front of the Colombo Fort railway station. Protesters demanded the increase of the daily wage of estate workers. With that, let's take a look at some local news across the island in brief.
2 police officers were arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department for their alleged involvement in a drug trafficking operation. The suspect, who was being interrogated by the Mawatagama police, had revealed that the 2 officers were involved in drug trafficking in the area. The 2 officers in question were a 56-year-old sub-inspector of police attached to the Mawatagama police and a 38-year-old police sergeant attached to the Dorotiawa police. In the meantime, a murder convict who had been in hiding for 35 years was taken into police custody while in the Pugoda area. The arrestee had been convicted for the murder of an engineer of the Ceylon Electricity Board and was later sentenced to death. Reportedly, he had changed his identity by forging a national identity card and a birth certificate. In other local news, the Ceylon Workers' Congress launched a protest in front of the Colombo Fort railway station. The Congress demanded that daily wages of estate workers be raised to 1,700 rupees.
Welcome back. The Colombo Bourse ended the week in negative territory, weighed down by losses in energy and consumer discretionary stocks. The benchmark all-share price index settled at 0.38% lower at 11,753.04 points. Trading volume on the ASPI rose to 102.9 million shares from 71 million in the previous session. The S&P SL20 meanwhile fell 0.75% and closed at 3,449.43 points. During the past week of trading, the all-share index lost 2.3% and the SL20 fell by 3.4%. Market turnover for the day stood at 1.48 billion rupees, taking the week's average daily turnover to 1.95 billion rupees. Foreign investors closed as net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 25.9 million rupees, while domestic investors offloaded shares worth 1.45 billion rupees. And now let's take a look at the rupee exchange rates against other currencies during the day. prices slipped today following an earlier price spike of more than $3 after Iran played down reported Israeli attacks on its soil, in a sign that an escalation of hostilities in the Middle East might be avoided. Brent futures were down 0.6% to settle at $86.63 a barrel. The most active U.S. West Texas Intermediate contract was down 0.5% to end at $82.35. Investors had been closely monitoring Israel's reaction to the April 13th Iranian drone attacks and have been gradually unwinding oil's risk premium this week. Prices have fallen more than 4% since Monday and are set for their biggest weekly loss since early February. Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers have tucked sanctions on Iran's oil exports into a pending Ukraine aid package, which targets ships, ports or refineries that process Iranian crude and transactions from Chinese financial institutions involving purchase of petroleum from Iran. According to Reuters, Iran is the third largest oil producer in the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. And now let's take a look at today's corporate news.
DFCC Bank's children's savings account, DFCC Junior, recently launched e-gift vouchers as part of its benefit scheme in partnership with Tiago.lk. The e-vouchers allow DFCC Junior account holders to claim their awards in addition to physical gifts and gift vouchers, value credit schemes and DFCC Junior rewards. Meanwhile, HNB recently announced its partnership with Higher Education Institute CICRA campus in a bid to provide students with convenient payment schemes to pursue their academic and technical aspirations. HNB said the Study Now Pay Later scheme is designed to alleviate the financial pressures on students and their families. In other corporate news, Colombo City Holdings plc appointed S.L. Sebastian as an independent non-executive director of the company with effect from the 17th of April. The company's corporate disclosure further said Sebastian has no relevant interest in the shares of the company as at the date of his appointment.
And with that, we conclude tonight's bulletin over here at First at 9. I'll see you once again on World News in just a moment. Thanks for watching. Good night.